Hello, and thanks for coming along to And We Have an Office Dog, the digital agency podcast where we talk to agency owner-directors and learn more about what makes them tick. From the things that make them similar to the things they'd rather have known sooner, where they've had success and where they've learned some hard lessons. All will be revealed with your host, Chris Simmons, the agency coach, and he'll be talking to a different awesome agency person in each episode, asking them 4 questions and seeing where the conversation takes us over the next 25 minutes. Okay, so let us begin. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, voiceover guy. And on the podcast today, we've got Luke Sherran, co-founder of Falkon. How are you doing, Luke?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you?
Very good, thank you. We've just had an awful lot of technical difficulties for 2 smart people who do this an awful lot.
We definitely should know better. This should not happen to us.
It really shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I'll admonish myself somewhat more later. This is a special recording because this is the second recording I've done with the founder of Falkon. We did a recording which went live a couple of months ago with Sadie, who is your co-founder and also wife. So this is going to be a really good one. I'm going to see what you say that is dead opposite to her, and then I'm going to send her the clippings later.
I'm going to be in so much trouble later.
So don't get nervous, but definitely get nervous, and we'll see how we get on. So, first of all, for anyone who didn't listen to Sadie's episode, tell us a bit about Falkon, tell us what you do in the agency and what the agency does in general.
Super. So, Falkon Digital, so web design, digital marketing agency based in Cheshire. We've been going since May 2009. From a web design perspective, we focus on kind of the higher end projects with platforms like WordPress and Shopify. And then from a digital marketing side, we kind of specialize more in video marketing, video production, with a heavy focus around YouTube. And that's really kind of what I do kind of day to day. My job now is really video marketing and YouTube. Yeah, it's kind of a big change from how we started.
You and I feel like this isn't so recent because I'm just remembering it, but you just got like 2 million views or something. You got an award.
I had 180 million views on
Bloody hell, that's
YouTube.
even more than I thought. Okay.
Yeah, so it was quite a big one, a big milestone. I've got a personal YouTube channel which originally was just a testing ground where I could experiment, test things out, see what worked, and then hopefully apply those same strategies for some of our clients. And then more recently, I was like, I really want to make a thing of my own YouTube channel. And so the last 3 months, I've actually had about 100 million views in the last 3 months, I think. So so it's been fun.
And does it translate into money? Does it work or?
It does. So I mean, last month I actually earned 3 times more than I did through Falkon from YouTube. So
this is the last episode that Falkon will be on the podcast because there is no connectivity in Bermuda. Brilliant. Yeah. So the agency's been running since 2009. An awful lot's changed in digital marketing world as well as the web development world. I remember what WordPress was like in 2009. That was that was really hard to work with.
Sure.
Certainly a different world now. So what do you think, longevity aside, what's been one of the biggest successes that you've seen with the agency since you started?
Longevity aside, I would say it's probably been our ability to pivot and to adapt, really. Like you say, lots of things have changed since we started in 2009. We've been fortunate enough to see other businesses kind of come and go within that time frame. And I think that the reason that we're still here is because we are a little bit more agile as an agency and that we've been able to change. And when things have changed, a lot of companies see that as a bad thing. They've had something that works for a while and then something changes and it's a disaster. Whereas we've always seen it as an opportunity. It's like, well, how do we work with this?
Yeah, and if you look at the tombstone of every failed business, it almost always says we've always done it this way somewhere on there. Adaptability and flexibility is massive, and I think you've got pretty much with you and Sadie, you've got the same core team for the majority of the time as well. It's Chris as well. Is it no? Who is it that works? Who is it? I can't remember his name now. Sorry.
It's Steve. Steve's our technical director. Yeah.
That was it. I've seen over the years, like, you guys are almost like a family. You've worked so close together for so many years, and I think that helps when it comes to being flexible because you're all hungry for the same thing, and I think that's really quite a nice way of doing it.
Oh, 100%. We are like a family. I mean, Steve, who works with us, I've known Steve since 2000. We met on our first day at university.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. So it's a very close-knit team for sure. And that really helps because you got 100% trust in what everyone's doing, which is great.
Yeah, and that trust allows you to be able to say, look, we're going to change this because this is better, or this is less bad for whatever reason or another.
Exactly.
And the trust goes both ways, because he'll be able to say, I've got this idea, I think this is the right move, and you can kind of trust that it's worth having a look at.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think the flexibilities in the last since 2009, I think Google's done about 3 updates a year. Platforms have changed a million different times over, and if you aren't flexible, then you are one of those kind of old guard, not that valuable businesses anymore. And you know, you've got to be able to support your team and your family and grow, and you've done that, which is a brilliant success. Which I mean, it is around longevity, but the longevity is because you've moved with the times.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
brilliant.
I mean, the agency that we are today is 100% different to how we started, basically, which is definitely a good thing.
Well, I recall that your agency started on the back of a napkin in a restaurant.
It did, actually. Yeah, that's true. A drunken napkin, probably, as well. So, yeah. So Sadie and I both worked for 8 different agencies. She worked for an agency in Liverpool. I worked for an agency in Manchester. And we were basically ships in the night. We just kind of crossed. We both, for whatever reason, felt undervalued at the companies that we worked for, and we decided we were going to do our own thing. And yeah, this is before smartphones, so we didn't even have a smartphone to write this down on. It was literally a napkin in a bar with a pen, and that was where our business plan first resided. So,
and no wonder it pivoted.
Absolutely, it's probably a very, very good thing that it did. Yeah.
So if you could go back, and obviously not necessarily napkin day, but if you could go back to when you started running the agency as a proper agency, and go back and you give yourself some advice only, what advice would you give to younger, full head of hair Luke?
Oh, cheap shot. Yeah, I'd be very jealous with the hair, for starters. That's tricky. There's a lot of things I'd like to say to that imbecile. I think the biggest thing, I know it probably sounds really cheesy, but it's definitely to work smarter, not harder. I think when we first started the agency, we just had the fear, had a big time fear. And so we were working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to build momentum, get things going. And oddly, I was very proud of that fact, the fact that I could work for 16 hours a day and work through the night. Yeah. I think they call that hustle porn now, don't they?
Yeah, there's an epidemic of that right now. There's
sure.
a lot of busy, there's not a lot of productive.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I probably could have cut that time in half and still really done the same amount of work. And the biggest thing that I had in terms of not working smart, was the fact that we were constantly chasing new work. So we were chasing work, doing the work, then starting again. It's just like a constant hamster wheel. Yeah. And we just didn't have any kind of... We had retainers for digital marketing, but not for development. I didn't really feel like we could. Whereas now, almost all of our development work is on retainer-based, agreements. And it just makes things so much easier, because you can then really just focus on doing the work and not constantly wondering where the next piece of work is going to come from.
And I know this is almost a hard question to answer, but if you were to have been given that advice by yourself, and obviously you knew it was yourself giving the advice, do you think you'd have listened to it? Because like you did that because that was the right thing at the time in your head. So what would you have done if you'd popped into existence, older Luke and younger Luke had a chat?
I don't know. So I am, and I certainly was, extremely arrogant. So I probably would have thought that I knew better.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah. So I probably wouldn't have taken it. I think there's certain lessons that have to be learned yourself in life. I was given lots of great advice when we started the business, and I don't think I took much of it on board until I actually learned it for myself later.
So a pivot on that question, because you love pivots. So if you had the choice to go back and give yourself that piece of advice, would you choose to go back and give yourself that advice?
Oh, that's a good one. So, I mean, my own personal this is a little look into the mind of Luke here.
Oh dear.
I'm all about like the butterfly effect. So I think like one change would have a catastrophic change in my entire life. So no, I wouldn't, because of that. That sounds really odd, doesn't it, God?
So existentially, no.
Existentially, no. But in principle, yes, I probably would, because I think it would have made my life so much easier.
Yeah, fair enough. And then if you were to go back and I forget whether I managed to get Sadie to answer this, but if you could go back and give advice that wouldn't have caused an argument, but give advice to Sadie about starting a business with you, what advice would you give to her?
Oh wow, okay, that's a good one. I would say you just need to be super patient, because I'm going to be grumpy and stressed for a good 2 or 3 years before things really start to settle down. So just please be patient.
And that is good advice. I think knowing Sadie, she'd have nodded and smiled, but probably ignored it and gone her own way as well, because
I think she'd have drunk a lot more wine.
Let's not get you into any more trouble. So is there something that over the years of running the agency, I know that you pivoted and you're flexible with the changes and things, but is there something that you kind of wish you'd done sooner now that you know where the land lay?
Yeah, I think when we first started growing the agency and we realized we needed to take more people on to cope with the demand of the work that we had, we were too scared to hire. So what we did was we found people that were fresh out of university, and we did apprenticeship programs, all with the idea of kind of training them up and molding them into our own way of how we wanted. And in reality, I think we would have been far better off just forking out the money and bringing in the right people early on. Even if it meant paying them more than we were paying ourselves, just to get those right people on board and get that foundation for the business so much earlier on. We wasted so much time training people only for them to then get poached by a bigger agency.
And that's so hard. It really is. I did the same. I think almost every agency owner that has kind of built from zero has had at the very least that kind of argument cerebrally, that do I hire young and build them myself? Do I spend on one person? And it's so hard, because the work, the quality you want, so you think actually it's probably better to have someone who's not in a horrible way, people listening, tainted. They've not had systems and processes that they've had to unlearn. They're learning it from zero. That can work, it can be good, but I think if you're going to do that, you need to be one of the larger companies, because they can then have L&D programs, they can absorb the loss of someone being poached and things like that. Whereas the smaller agencies, when they're starting out, like Optus did, like you did, the argument is in the other direction, which is, Jesus Christ, that's a really expensive person. Am I definitely going to get the value out of that person? I don't know what bad habits they've got until they get in the door. Oh my God, this is really expensive. There's a lot of risk here. Oh my God, okay, go for the young one. Get the apprentice in. And
what's interesting is it would have worked out better, because a lot of the young guys didn't realize that they were onto a good thing when they worked with us. So we had one in particular who, he'd been working with us since he left university. He then decided he wanted to move on to bigger and better things, went to a bigger agency, and he came back because he didn't enjoy the lifestyle. And I tried to explain to him, we're trying to move away from the agencies that we used to work from. We wanted to create an agency that we would want to work at, if that makes sense. But because he never experienced that, they just didn't really appreciate it. And I think if we had hired somebody else from another agency, they would have really appreciated our work lifestyle better.
I think you're right with that, and I guess that's a lesson which is someone else's to learn, and you can do everything that you could possibly think of to try and kind of make somewhere great, but until they see that the view from the other side of the fence, it just isn't. There's nothing to compare it to, so it's just work. So is there something that you kind of did really early on that not necessarily stuck to, but you realised was a really good way of running the business, and it was an early success that became something part of Falkon that's indelibly attached now?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I had to answer that question, it would be just how we have always worked with our clients. I think when we first started and we were a new agency, we just took on every piece of work that we could, and sometimes we knew that it wasn't the best client for us, but we took it because we wanted the work.
You saw the pound signs, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we got into this kind of a way where we were just treated as an outsource and someone that would technically deliver the client's vision, if that makes sense. And so we didn't feel like we had a lot of control, and we often felt actually that they were making decisions that weren't the best decisions for their business, and we hated it. So we changed our business strapline. It is actually something like your digital partner.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to be strategically having a relationship with our clients where we could discuss things, we could talk through things, and they would appreciate our experience and what we do, and we would obviously understand that it's their business, and they understand their business better than anybody. It's always about having those conversations, and we've done that from early on, and it's always worked out very well for us. It's always meant that we've had good long-term relationships with all of our clients.
Well, if you go into a relationship with the right expectations on both sides, then it's great. And if you do the pound sign chasing, which every agency on its first starting sort of blocks does, that you don't get to do the expectation management thing. It's a bought on price style agreement. But when you come in and all of your messaging and all of your persona and the values of the business all kind of exude this is what we do, this is who we are, and it's the same from the moment they land on your webpage for the first time through to signing the contract to the onboarding and everything. If they feel the same as they did at the beginning, the expectations are managed really well. Then consistency means you get that client for a very long time, and they get the results that they've been looking for a very long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
We used to have a strapline at Optus, which was "We won't hurt you like your last relationship," and it was and it, a bit punchy. You know me. It was because I realised that so many agencies do the wrong way of managing expectations, and it is still a transactional relationship, and then the pain that both sides go through at the end is it's not like a relationship breakup, but it is painful because it costs money. There's results, there's issues around that, there's time lost, there's all sorts of things. And if you work with someone like you want to be treated, you're a partner with them, you treat them like you would want to be treated, and they know their business better than you, but you know your service better than they do, then it works really, really well. There's times when, if that's the case and you truly live that, there's times when you know that, for example, you might give a client some advice. Part of the strategy is to do something that they definitely don't want to do for whatever reason it might be. They can give you a good reason as to why they shouldn't do that because they know their business, they know their sector. Well, then you wouldn't push that because you don't go, well, this is the right way of doing it. You'd say, it's not the right way of doing it for you. Technically, by the book, you should do it this way. Let's work out an alternative to either minimize the impact of not doing it or maximize something somewhere else. That's the right way to behave.
Absolutely, yeah.
Too many agencies are afraid to lose the client or have an awkward conversation. If you go into it early doors with, there might be some awkward conversations, but we're here to help you. It works.
And in your position, do you see that a lot now?
Yeah.
I don't mean to ask you questions, but I'm
this is great. Keep going. I can say all the keywords like coaching, mentoring, leadership, blah blah blah.
Nice.
So I spend quite a lot of the agencies that I'm working with. It's not just about getting new clients in. They seem to not have that bigger problem. I think it's the retention of the clients and retention of the staff, and it's all then built around the values and expectation management. And manage expectations, you lose less.
The
agency game is a game of losing less and losing less over a longer period of time until you can sell the agency or exit in whichever way you want to. And unless you're focused on like a long horizon, that's a long horizon would be similar to what you guys are working on. You've got an end in mind in your heads. That's why you can move and pivot and be flexible, because those things always realign you to that end goal. And if you're not managing expectations of people along the way, you're going to keep tripping over. And it's all people. You know, people deliver the service, people take the service, people see the results, people buy from the clients. If it were anything other than people connected, then you wouldn't have any of those problems. And it's almost always expectations, getting something out of your head into someone else's head. And that's again why maybe it's easier to hire super juniors and train them up, because it's easier to get this out of your head into a fresh, empty head, as it were. Not saying
Empty
you're
head,
thick,
brilliant.
just saying you've never learned it before.
Yeah.
So if you were to have a new agency leader come to you with their napkin asking what they should do to set up their business, what one piece of advice might you give them?
I don't know if I've got one golden nugget. I've just got lots of little things, all based on mistakes that I made as we were going along. I think the first thing I would say is, again, coming back to what we've already said, it's just hiring the right people early on, and not just staff as well, but the right suppliers that you need, making sure you have the right accountants, these kinds of things early doors. We made a big mistake with accountants when we first started.
It sounds like a no-brainer, right? An accountant is an accountant, but they're not.
No, they're not. We made a mistake going for individual, independent accountants, thinking that they would be the best option, or they might be cheaper, because again we were concerned about money. But actually going with the big ones, they weren't that much more expensive, and you've got so much more support and so much more expertise there.
Yeah, it's the business advice bit that you get from an accountant. That
Yes.
I'm not advocating that an accountant knows how to run any other business in an accountancy firm, and usually an accountant who works in an accountancy firm works for it, but they understand the mechanics of the financial aspects of a business.
Yeah.
And that isn't just being efficient with what tax to pay and where to pay it and how to pay it. It's other things like management accounts, cash flow forecasting. Those are things that they know you know to have, but you never do, and you're not gonna do it yourself unless someone tells you to do it.
Yeah.
And a good set of management accounts will see you through recessions, because you know what to tweak, what to change, what to drop, what to pick up 3 months before it's a problem.
Yeah.
And you don't get that with the wrong accountant.
Exactly. And in fact, I don't know if I've ever spoken to you about this before, but I actually set up a business straight out of university, which failed spectacularly, by the way.
Great.
And
lessons learned.
It is lessons learned. And one of the reasons it failed was because I tried to do everything. And really, it's with Falkon, I've always known early on that there's certain things I'm not good at, and certain things I'm interested in being good at. There's just not a good use of my time, and I've always hired people to do those things. I'd much rather pay for an accountant to do absolutely everything: personal tax returns, bookkeeping, VAT returns, corporation, everything. So I've got nothing to do with it. I just sign and pay.
And sign, pay, and then when they speak, you listen.
Exactly.
And I often say to agency leaders, that's the boring stuff that you did not set up your agency to do. If you know it and you understand it, it's still better for someone else to do it, so you're away from it. If you're so close to the numbers, you sometimes make decisions that shouldn't have been made because of those numbers. You look at the number going down and you make a people decision you shouldn't do, or you react differently when a client looks like they might be leaving, and they weren't looking like they were leaving, but you just looked at the numbers before the client call and those sorts of things. It's like you keep away from those things that are as you grow, it's lots of agencies bring in a financial controller into the agency, but as you grow, you really need something like that. You really do.
Yeah, definitely.
So hiring is one piece of advice, one thing that you've learned, and obviously getting the right sort of boffins from an accounting calculator point of view in place is another thing. Imagine if someone's they're starting up an agency, and there's quite a lot of these agencies that are popping in and around now around the video production stuff. There's quite a lot of it that they're doing, which is and I might be wrong here. I'm only just dipping my toe into video, as I said to you before the recording. There's a lot of these agencies that are essentially selling services which are they download the app, they build the reels and the stuff like that out of your raw video and charge to run it. Do you think that if someone came along and they said, I've got this idea, I want to run an agency like this, what would you say? go ahead, it's going to work? Would you say be really careful? What would you say to that person?
It's tricky. So it sounds like a good idea in principle, and I think as long as you are in a position where you can pivot if something changes, good. It's not what we would want to do. It sounds too kind of quantity based rather than quality based, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm although I'm an expert, so to speak, in video and video marketing, I'm good at what I do, and so I don't know if I can necessarily give advice to somebody else about their business model. But yeah, in principle, it sounds like it could be a good idea. I just don't know what the lifespan of it necessarily would be.
This is the thing. And I always find that when there's a new trend or a new thing, businesses pop up like mushrooms, and just like mushrooms, they typically die quite quick as well. So it's just an interesting thing. I've spotted so many services. I'm looking for a tool to edit my own video, and I find 15 businesses that are offering 2-minute video editing stuff, and I'm like, you're competing against so much. It's very hard.
It is, absolutely. And if you don't know as well, it's very difficult to make a decision. Who's good, who's not. It's almost like a trial and error kind of situation, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for coming on to the podcast, and
You are
finally,
so
thanks for coming along to the podcast as well. I'm glad
you.
there's been a big gap between yourself and Sadie's, because I think
too.
there's something to listen to there. When this one gets released, I'm going to link to Sadie's one as well, so people can listen to
so
them
much trouble.
one after the other and see what happens. I'm also going to send this recording to Sadie later, so she can see it.
Oh no!
So
Brilliant.
have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. Thanks. So we can do a game of spot the difference on it.
But thanks very much for coming on. It's been great to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And in our next podcast, we'll be talking to a different agency leader to hear what they've learned and maybe some of the mistakes that have helped them pivot along the way as well. So thanks very much.